a Tyrannocyte hive ship launches a pre-digestive assault, its creatures are transported to the planet's surface by tentacled ovoids known as Tyrannocytes. Though each spore appears to be little more than a giant veiny sac, it is in fact a creature unto itself and one possessed of its own fierce appetites. Spat from the quivering orifices of the hive ship in low orbit, the Tyrannocyte thunders through the tortured skies to slam into the surface of its target world. This impact will cause its gravid belly to split, disgorging the Tyranids inside in a spray of grisly fluids. Once its passengers have been delivered, the Tyrannocyte fills with gaseous emissions and floats eerily into the air. There it begins to obey its own murderous instincts, the bioweapons that fringe its crown, spitting death as its barbed tendrils quest for prey. During the fall of Obsidian Line, it was the coming of the Tyrannocytes and their fell cargo that tipped the scales of battle. No sooner had the soldiers won some measure of respite from the gene stealers than the sky was filled with falling fleshy pods. Cut off from the heavy ordnance stored within the subterranean magazines of the fortress, the gunners could only look on as the first Tyrannocytes touched down, their sides splitting open to reveal swarms of fleshy spawned horrors. The Sporocysts are ejected from their parent hives with even greater force than the Tyrannocytes they accompany. Once they make planetfall, they will spread their chitinous shells and burrow under the skin of the planet like ticks digging into unprotected flesh. Once embedded, the Sporocyst coughs out clouds of polluting microorganisms that denature its host planet's atmosphere until the air itself is ripe for digestion. When threatened, these creatures will squeeze out the flaccid spore forms they carry, these smaller bioforms rapidly inflating to become either a cluster of spore mines or a larger and deadlier Mucolid spore. There are persistent theories that the Sporocyst also acts as a psychic resonator of sorts, boosting the abilities of those synapse beasts nearby to channel the hive mind's ravenous imperatives. The Mucolid spore is a creature inimical to natural law, for its whole existence is geared towards spectacular self-destruction. Borne aloft by evil-smelling gases that roil inside the vain balloon of its body, this bioform can float either at ground level or rise high enough to intercept enemy aircraft. Its dangling tentacles languidly taste the air for its prey. When the proximity of a non-Tyranid lifeform is detected, the Mucolid spore will drift close before detonating into a storm of bioacid. Mucolid spores are drawn towards anything moving swiftly through the air, exploding with lethal force once close within their target, making them a deadly obstruction for enemy flyers. Victims that are not destroyed by the blast are often hurled out of control, crashing into the ground below. During the assault of Gorgo, spores of all kinds rained down upon Gorgo as the tendril of High Fleet Leviathan darkened its skies, a floating orb of alien flesh drifting atop a tangle of barbed tentacles. These living bombs quickly earned the name Sky Death among the defenders. Wherever the massive Mucolid spore fall, they rain destruction, their bioacid and living shrapnel ripping through ceramite, plate steel, and flesh. Okay, this is going to be the unboxing of the Tyranid Tyrannocyte, which also includes the Sporocyst, the Mucolid spore, and also 5 spore mines. As you can see, comes with the color scheme with the box. Okay, this is what ends up coming out in the Tyranid Tyrannocyte box. We have 1, 2, 3 sprues. Comes with the base for the Tyrannocyte, 1 base. A base for the Mucolid spore. I think that's looks like a 40mm, and then little 25mm bases for the spore mines. The box also comes with a rulebook on the back. If you take a look at it, if you're wondering where can you get the rules for this model, they come in the back. So something cool, I guess, a little free tidbit that they added. instruction manual to basically make the either one if you want to. As you can see, the Tyrannocyte comes with different assortments of cannons, biocannons, and different weaponry that you could basically upgrade it for additional 25 points. The model costs about 75 points, so it'll give you a nice rounded number of 100 points. As you can see, you got some spore mines right here. We have the flaps, piece of the floating sack of the Tyrannocyte. In this sprue we have more wings, as I think of them as, little floating wings. More spore mines, more different biocannons for the Tyrannocyte. And then in this last sprue we end up having the head for the Mucolid Spore, as you can see. The top piece for the Tyrannocyte, the little mouthpiece right here. Little toxic sacs for the Mucolid Spore. And there you go for the unboxing for the Tyrannocyte. Now time for my review of the Tyranid Tyrannocyte. The one thing that I actually like a lot more about the Tyrannocyte is it actually doesn't take up one of your detachments. So you could actually bring in as many of these as you want, as long as you just pay the points. And another thing that I noticed while reading the rules about the Tyrannocyte is that since it's a monstrous creature, it's able to shoot with all 5 of its cannons, measuring, I guess, along the length. As long as it's within the, I guess, the aiming length of the guns, you're able to shoot every single cannon, since technically it's a monstrous creature, and monstrous creatures are able to see along the sights of 360 degrees, so it's able to shoot all around itself. But the way I think of it as, like, the Tyrannocyte like constantly turns around while it's floating, because it's able to consolidate itself and then also move along while it's shooting. Once it actually kills an enemy, it also lets you use deep strike with it, and no matter what, within the rules, if you deep strike or you had a mishap of a deep strike where you come in too close to a unit, you're actually able to move your Tyrannocyte back without letting it cause any damage or losing your units. And if your units, after you deploy them, they are still close to your enemy or within dangerous terrain, you could actually move your Tyrannocyte back more without still losing it, and also deploying your units as well. So that's a cool thing. But the one thing that I always seem to notice that it's always a big issue about this new model is if it's able to shoot with all of its cannons. But as long as you go along the rules terms, I guess, within the campaign supplement, it basically says that the Tyrannocyte is able to shoot with all 5 of its cannons. The Sporocyst is able to have the special ability of infiltrate, and it also is able to produce basically 3 spore mines every single turn that it's actually in battle, as you can see. It also comes with 5 biocannons as well. And it also gives your units synapse, which is also good if you infiltrate with your units and you actually use them to go into close range within your enemy's line of sight. Lets you produce 1 Mucolid Spore once a game. The Mucolid Spore is basically like a heavier detachment of a spore mine. Or you could either take the Tyrannocyte, which are able to bring in 20 units, or either 1 monstrous creature with it. As you can see, it's not such a bad looking model. The one thing that seemed to notice once we actually built the model is that we actually had to use some green stuff on the inside of this part, so you actually wouldn't be able to see the cracks as much, because there's mold lines, as you can see from the Tyrannocyte. But basically came out like a nice looking model. If you're wondering about the lore, you could actually find a little bit of the lore in the Invasion Swarms painting guide. The Tyrannocyte first came out in the White Dwarf. If you're wondering, it also comes out with a little bit of the lore as well for it. So either way, if you go along and deciding to buying the Tyrannocyte or the Sporocyst or the Mucolid Spore, it talks a little bit about both of the models, or all three of the models basically, in the White Dwarf. And then as well, it also gives like a little brief mention in the invasion swarms. But if you're trying to go along the route of getting the actual rulebook, which will include all the new models of the new Tyranids, you could actually go and pick up the campaign supplement Leviathan, which comes with a lot more lore in both models, all three models technically, and also with the rules. Yes, if you're wondering about the rules for the Tyrannocyte, Sporocyst, or the Mucolid Spore, it comes in the White Dwarf issue, which might still be available. It's issue 41, if you're wondering. That came out in November of 2014. Or you could pick up the Leviathan supplement campaign. Or you could also go online, which they're available for free on the Black Library as well. But as well as you could see, the box itself also came with a set of rules, if you're wondering. So either way along, if you go around the rules, you could still try to get them either way. So you don't have to spend that extra dollar or penny if you want. The one big noticing factor about this box is that you could either make only the Tyrannocyte and 5 Spore mines, or you could either just make a Sporocyst with a Mucolid with 5 Spore mines. Either way, you could either make one or the other. Either you substitute the Tyrannocyte with the Mucolid, or you take a Mucolid instead of the Tyrannocyte. And this is my review of the Tyranid, Tyrannocyte, Sporocyst, and the Mucolid Spore.